So. I saw an earlier email, but when was the recap on the environmental out at the ranch? I'm not sure I'm going to make that, but
The 26th is that introductory meeting
okay.
or get together. And I did respond back, but I did see that she had said 4 hours and then, so yeah, so I'm planning on doing that one.
Yeah, thanks.
And that's on the 26th, so.
Do you know, are they taping it or anything so that you could join online or anything?
No, I'll go there.
Okay.
It'll just be, I don't know what it is, just an introductory and probably divvying up teams or whatever it is. Find out who's all on that group.
So they haven't sent an agenda out yet. I'm sure she will.
There was, I'd have to look and see, there was something recently and I thought it was kind of an agenda, it was, it wasn't spelled out specifically, but I think it gave you a good idea of what was coming.
Yeah, I saw it too. It was an 8 to 12. That's basically what I recall. And they did break it down a little bit.
Yeah, and then there was one just a few weeks ago or a week ago, and it, she sent out a little bit more. Yeah. All right, well, we'll go ahead and call the meeting order and Wyatt comes up and I'm guessing Rex is, oh, that's right, he was out. Tours. So, we're going to call the meeting for Board of Appeals, October 12th. At 8:05 a.m. And members present is I, Paul Higman. We have Clint and Steve. I haven't seen Rex or Wyatt. All right. And then I don't know if we need to announce now.
We can do that. I'm Eric Freed, the chief building official. We have Leslie Ellis, who's our community development director, and Jennifer Fling, who's our business operations supervisor, because Katie James is on vacation today.
And Wyatt had emailed
For
me
the
this-
first half hour, and then I have to duck out.
I know that.
Right.
All right, and then we have no personal or no appeals or anybody else present. All right,
By the way, Wyatt had emailed in earlier this morning saying he was sick, so he was not attending. He would monitor the recording later, so he's not
Okay.
attending remotely.
okay,
But I haven't heard from Rex.
all right. All right, so we have the minutes from last meeting.
Have any changes? So
Oh, okay,
no comments. Look fine.
Yeah. okay. I didn't have any either, so. Clint, did you see anything in there?
Nope, everything looked good.
All right, well then I guess I'll recommend approval of the minutes for September meeting. Have a second,
A second.
and then all in favor, just say aye.
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 Any opposed? No abstentions.
Was that you or Steve who seconded? I couldn't tell.
Clint.
Okay.
Yeah, I did.
It helps that it puts a yellow bar around.
I wasn't looking, okay.
That's how I got it, like. All right, so. All right, we have no tabled items, no hearing items or appeals, just the discussion item, which I guess I'll let you take and see.
Yeah, I could start and then maybe Leslie can chime in if she wants to. One of the things the Board of Commissioners discussed was moving forward, having all boards and commissions come up with a work plan for the following year, just so there was a general idea of what the board was going to be doing. Now, I think after I heard that all the boards had to develop a work plan, I think I heard clarification that didn't necessarily apply to statutory boards, which is this board, the Board of Adjustment, and the Planning Commission, because we exist to do a specific thing in state law, and that's the thing we do. But it seemed like it might be a good discussion anyway. This is new, so most of the boards are for the first time coming up with their work plan. Obviously, it's more important if you're like a policy-making board where you don't have something specific you have to do, so the commissioners wants to know, well, what are you gonna be focusing on, what are you gonna do next year? But I thought it might be a good exercise anyway for us to have a general idea. I gave you, and most of the boards don't have one yet because this is new. I gave you guys a copy of what the Environmental Science Advisory Board does. That's way beyond, I think, what this board's gonna do. They're very ambitious and they have like a 70-page annual report and listed all their meetings and everything they did. So I don't think we need to do that. But if you looked at the Environmental Science Advisory Board, they talked about some of the current topics in that broad field that they were gonna be looking at. They talked about a lot of stuff, communication and process, but, I was thinking we could make something fairly simple that says that we will respond to appeals as necessary. We'll be looking at the following topics, however we want to write that climate smart future ready plan, any legislation that comes before the legislature next year where the commissioners want input, wildfire, whatever topics we think we're going to talk about, and put together something that would pretty easily fit on one page.
I think that's an excellent description, and the goal of this work planning with the boards is to align the work plan of the boards with the county commissioners and vice versa. So the request came through the manager's office to all the boards to do this exercise so it can go back to the county commissioners and then they can review it and provide some input. And I think you all had that conversation with them not that long ago, and it came up in that conversation too. So the idea is to determine what your interests are and your specialties and how that might line up with some of the other county initiatives and projects and that sort of thing. So these are the types of things that we're interested in working on and we think we can add value as a board.
My thought for a process is it's October, so we have a little bit of time. We could have the discussion today, or could suggest what it is they want to do. I could draft something, we could send it out to the board members who aren't here, and then maybe at the October meeting, we could tweak it. Okay, this is our adopted work plan for 2020.
Yeah. I think it would be a good idea, to look at 23 as we enter into the year. And I mean, knowing that, we're always available for appeals, and that's really the main function, is we're just kind of waiting for that. But I think that we do have to look through that agenda piece about how we're working with, or how we looking at the other groups. And like I looked at the Environmental Science Advisory Board, and some of the things that they were looking at doing or saying, it was like, okay, well, that will have an impact when we look at our code review cycles and things of that nature. So being involved with them and looking at that would be a good idea to set that up going into for 23, because as we know, the codes are getting more and more sort of inclusive as far as other areas, like we were talking a lot with zoning and land use and some of those other aspects. And it's really hard to do a code review in a few weeks or months for the recommendation of the next cycle. So putting that out there and being able to say, here's what the other boards are, where's the code kind of heading, and is there issues that we need to address now to have discussions about? Because if we can catch it early on, then we would prevent that. Well, we want to do this, and it's like, well, we can't do that type of idea, that we can come up with a reason or some type of working together. So I think, that and then that other, the climate smart, definitely staying on top of that as far as where they're wanting to make recommendations and what's going to happen and how that's going to come back to the built environment.
So Eric, I thought you came up with some good comments right off the bat. And so I started my own list. And I don't know, they're probably just repeating what you said, but our basic function is to, so I'm just doing line items of topics to start the conversation, but our basic role is to, respond to any appeals. So that would certainly be number one task. I know you brought up several times that state and legislature and upcoming things like wildfire conditions and those kinds of things. So I think state is always something we kind of want to monitor and have any input on that we think the commissioners we could add value for. Obviously, another thing that we've kind of accepted is our code review. So I just put municipalities in parentheses after code review because obviously we're not adopting a new code, but it might be more of a how can we facilitate other municipalities, meaning Lovelace Park, Wellington, to their specific needs so that we might be able to kind of collaborate forward to the next 2024 code review. So that would be another thought on my mind. The ESAB that we've just been talking about this morning briefly clearly is kind of on the forefront of how can we participate. That might be a bigger task than I think we all realize because as Paul mentioned, it has direct impacts into code enforcement and or amendments or any of those kind of things. And then lastly, I'm always the proponent to make sure that we're tying into any kind of planning and zoning or planning development standards that might be changing. The obvious example would be requirements for EVs and things like that, electrification, whatever, however you want to term that, but how we can tie in to make sure that our code is consistent or supporting to planning development in any way. So those were the hot topics that I kind of ran through in my mind as you started talking earlier. I'll stop there.
So to clarify one thing, you're talking about collaborating with other municipalities and their similar boards on getting them to adopt the 21 codes and then moving ahead to the 24 codes. Is that what you said?
No, I was just trying to say, making sure if we can start setting the precedents that we're in alignment with future reviews of code and or how maybe there's an overlap of did they adopt some amendments, say in Fort Collins we know of from an energy standpoint that we might want to have our board consider, which they're obviously interested in to some degree. So just the overlap of adjacent municipalities that how trades like professionals, design firms and or contractors have to bounce between multiple versions of the same code or variations of the code. So just trying to collaborate with municipalities and get a consistency on reading the code and interpreting and various amendments. So
one thing that I'd like to sort of be aware of and maybe caution too, and I know we kind of, I guess in the past have just been pretty much the appeals board where we're reactionary and we're looking at being a little bit more proactive in understanding that, but it's really is adding to our workload. I'm not looking at doing that. I think that the extensiveness of the rules that are coming around or that are out there now is a fair amount of work to stay on top of. And so for us to just be, educated in relationship between everything is daunting enough. And so I do want to be aware of that and say that that's really, maybe one of our primary things, and that is just trying to maintain understanding of the interrelationship between everything that's going on. So that when we are addressing an appeal from the public, that we understand what's in there, why it's in there, how does it. So that I am aware of, because I look at some of these and I go, wow, I know, we're a voluntary board and asking us to start to put some major hours in is a little much.
In terms of and looking ahead at the 24 codes, I know that the energy code is being worked on now, and you've talked about maybe giving us an advance look at the codes as they come out.
Yeah.
2023 National Electric Code will be out next year. Well, we ordered a copy for you, so if somebody else, hopefully you can look at that, and we can look at significant changes, and if there's anything there we need to be aware of, we can look at that one. But then the main code will come out the following year, so I don't see a huge amount of work for us to look at the 24 codes next year because it won't be finalized till the year anyway. The year after that, we'll,
Right, but one thing that and they're working on it now, and I don't think the committee or the group is formed, but Fort Collins is looking at rewriting their whole energy and not adopting the energy code, but writing a new one, which is based more on the performance aspect. So again, just about the time that we kind of line up, they also take off. So that's gonna, I think, be one of them that might be something for a lot of the, again, the rural communities saying, whoa, we're not on board yet. We just barely got there as far as what was being happening. Now all of a sudden you're taking off again. So that might be something that is coming through. I know on the 24. I did see on the commercial side, just kind of real quick, they are looking at ratcheting that down again, a little higher, a little tighter, a little harder, a little more requirements. So the 21 kind of did a little bit, but now this one's really coming in again. So we're going to continue to do that, I think.
I just noticed Rex emailed in about 15 minutes ago saying he's having difficulty finding the invite link. So I think I have that up. So let me send it to him real quick.
Okay. Yeah, I've been trying to monitor. There's no other attendees that, he hasn't got to that point, or I'd let him in the meeting.
I just noticed it, so I would have sent it sooner.
I didn't look at it.
I'd send it off to him, so hopefully he'll get it.
Okay.
We can continue, I guess.
I think that's a good move as far as moving, it's putting that out there, looking at putting one together for 23. Our year's almost over. 3 more meetings. 2 more.
Yeah, they're gonna ask us for the 22 work plan, just. And while Leslie's here, maybe you could offer some insight into just going, like EVs, but I think we'll also be looking at changing it for making more affordable housing options. That might be something that affects us.
Yeah, we're just getting started on a project with a consulting firm to look at the land use code and see if there are moves that we can make as a county to either streamline some of the standards or the procedures or fees or things like that that could help us achieve more affordable workforce housing in the community. And, you know, it'll be a bit of a balancing act because most of that's going to happen in municipalities, not in the county unincorporated area, but I think we have opportunities to look at it. We did some work last year and the year before to update the code to address, our version of ADUs, which we call accessory living areas. So the ALAs in our code became more permissive. Now you can rent them long-term and, you can have larger sizes and that kind of thing. So we've done some things already, but DOLA Department of Local Affairs had grant funding to work with local communities to help them maybe find ways to go further. And so we'll be doing more work around water planning. And I don't know that affects this board largely, but again, we got some grant funding to look at broader water master planning and utilities, but also things like watersheds and hazards and, kind of recovering from forest fires and the whole gamut of things that affect our water systems, how we interact with utilities and water. So that is another project that's on the horizon for the next, probably year and a half or so. So a couple of things coming up.
Is it common for jurisdictions to look toward the county for advice on some of those issues we just talked about, that and kind of sort of putting out the lead of that, and then they kind of say, well, we'll adopt this, but we want to do certain other areas, or is it something that they're just saying, hey, we're going to take this and we're just going to go on and,
Right.
oh, by the way, what is your
Yeah, it's a good question. Land use rules and regulations are very localized, so every municipality and the county each have their own land use codes, and we try to coordinate with the municipalities, and we have what we call growth management areas, and so we, and intergovernmental agreements where we try to work together in those areas at the edges of the communities to have more consistency and defer to the municipalities and that sort of thing. But otherwise, the county kind of does its thing in the unincorporated area and the municipalities do theirs. And they don't, necessarily look to us for alignment or anything like that. But I think when it comes to water planning, there's an opportunity for more maybe regional coordination. And, on some of the housing issues, maybe not so much in terms of rules and regulations, but in terms of working together at a regional level to address the issues around housing and housing affordability. Yes, I think the county can play a big role in that potentially.
Is there anything in the work plan of the Board of County Commissioners yet that we could respect to or reflect on or add to or be aware of so we can modify our work plan when we get to that point, or it's probably in progress with them?
It will be starting the next version of the strategic plan next year, I believe. So that may be something to keep your eye on, and there may be a role for your board and all the boards and commissions to, just participate in that, particularly if there are strategic objectives or goals that start to look like they might relate to the work that you do. So that would be something to probably just have on your radar. Maybe not, maybe or maybe not participate depending on the directions that it goes.
Yeah, well, it might be something to add to our work plan right now then as a topic. Adding to my previous list, just say collaboration with the Board of County Commissioners as desired, requested, whatever.
I'm right with them on developing on items on their work plan.
Well, I mean,
Strategic.
basically what we talked about, I guess, last spring, fall, whatever. Yeah, last spring, winter. I'm trying to remember when we had that meeting. But we talked about how can we support their board and interpret things and give them advice on building related, development related, I guess, construction related. So that's all I was trying to refer to as our previous conversation about supporting the Board of County Commissioners with advice when requested or desired.
The other thought that comes to mind is, I think always doing work around our customer experience and how we engage with the development community who works with us and vice versa. And so, there's probably going to be opportunities to give feedback or input around, how's that going? Are there procedures or processes that, could be improved? We're going to be rolling into electronic plan reviews in the coming, months and year. And so there's probably always going to be some opportunity for some engagement back and forth. I think you all are in a bit of a unique position in that you work with us not only as board members, but also as applicants sometimes, right? So that might be another really helpful, role that you can play.
Absolutely.
I know something that we've been asked in the past, and it might just go on this too, and that is a bit of that contractor education piece or outreach. Make it a list there, just throw that one on. Hello, Rex.
Sorry for the difficulties you had.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, we really weren't trying to exclude you.
Well, I appreciate that, but somehow I have to talk to Katie when she gets back. My password and ID were not working to log on, but I got on the latest webinar thing that you sent me, Eric. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll talk to Katie. We'll have to talk to the commissioner's office, Brenda, usually to see what's going on with your login stuff.
Hi, Rex. I have to jump off.
Okay.
today.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good to see you all.
It worked out great, Rex. We had 15 minutes to talk about you.
Yeah. Well, I miss Leslie, but I see her regularly.
I could recap, we've been talking about developing a work plan for 2023 at the request of the commissioners, which I think they mentioned when they were here a few months ago. And I sent out a copy of the Environmental Science Advisory Board one, just because I think that's the only one I know of. They've been doing this for a long time, and theirs is very long and detailed, and we don't need to be that long. But the things that were discussed so far, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, is number one, handling any appeals of building official determinations as needed. That's the statutory requirement of the board. looking ahead at the 2024 I codes, the 2023 National Electric Code, participating and offering recommendations on the climate smart and future ready Larimer County plan, commenting on any state legislative bills that come up that pertain to our area of expertise, including wildfire issues and energy codes, collaborating with other municipalities to align for future code adoptions, including considering their local amendments, commenting on land use code issues like electric vehicles, housing, water issues, looking at the Fort Collins Energy Code for 2024. I guess that fits into the other ones, seeing if we either want to go with them or stay with the other municipalities. Collaborating with the Board of Commissioners as appropriate on the development of the Strategic Plan 3, which will be starting next year. Getting involved or engaging on customer experience with the development review community, including electronic plan review or other processes or procedures we have. Contractor education and outreach. So that's what I heard so far. I don't know that if there's anything else or either that I missed or other suggestions you guys have. Go for
That
it.
was a great recap. Thanks.
Yeah, I think you got it covered.
So Rex, do you have any, I know you relate to the meeting obviously because we got you locked out, but is there anything else you think the board should have on its work plan or any of those items you think the board should not have on the work plan?
No, I think the list is fine. The thing though that occurs to me is that, and we've talked about it a number of years really, is I think there's still plenty of room to do more contractor education and maybe beyond contractor, if useful. I haven't thought really about how to do that. And I think, Eric, you're in a position to think about that over the next month or two and come up with maybe some suggestions. But I really don't think we are doing enough. Maybe Eric, it's because I'm not aware of what we are doing. But what about that as something that puts some emphasis on?
So not just contractor, but contractor and public education.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I've been talking to our plan review team a lot recently because we've had people complaining about it's taking longer to get through plan review and it's more complicated. So we're looking at what we can streamline, but we're also thinking, when people don't submit what we need or they submit things that don't comply with what we need, it means corrections go out. We have to wait for the corrections to come back and they get re-reviewed. So we'd like to get ahead of that with maybe, here's the 5 or 10 most common errors we see in plan submittal, whether it's wind design for high wind or annual JS&D that no one seems to be able to figure out. And if we can get that out in a handout or a webinar or on our website or something to people and tell them, look, here's the things that are tripping up folks. If you get these right, then your plans will go through easier. So that's the kind of thing I want to do more of rather than just bounce back and forth all the time.
I think that's
Eric?
great. I think that's great, Eric. I was gonna say the same thing. Are there any things that your office needs support on from our board? I know that's a whole operations and staffing question, but if there's ever anything that we can support your department on, of course, and you just brought them up. So top 10 problems, how to make a simple application, how to step through that and make sure your zoning's in place before you even submit for permit. There's some obvious things that you have to learn by pain sometimes, when you go into different municipalities. I can't do this until I do that. So, it might be a very helpful exercise to go through that, as if somebody coming into this was knocking on the door and going to the website. How are they going to get there and get through your system fastest? Because the goal is not to spend 3 rounds of review for your staff, but just the opposite, get it done in one and make sure the application is complete. So anyways.
Yeah, we'd love to approve it the first time through, but that rarely happens. So yeah, as I develop it, I could run it back by board members for your comments. Even something simple like if it's a commercial project, have you first gotten your zoning approval or a site plan waiver? Otherwise, if you're just coming in to us first, it could take months. You might have to go through planning first. You might never get approved and you just wasted all that time.
Right.
Most people know that, but not everyone knows that.
Did you have something?
Yeah, I do. So as I've been building this cabin up there in the mountains, some of the things that we've had to get permits for, such as my solar system, it's an off-grid cabin. So we had to do a ground mount solar system on this. And I thought I had gotten all the information we needed for a checklist on the website, but when I went to submit, it turned out that we didn't. So we had to go through and go back in and get all the stuff that was required. But I found it a little tricky moving around on the website, trying to find kind of like checklists or what all was going to be required. And this is on a simplistic level, not dealing with a big subdivision or anything like that, where we're worrying about zoning and planning and all that. But I don't know if the website could be streamlined a little bit better to help folks access what all is going to be required for a permit submittal, with everything laid out maybe a little more clearly. That's just something that I had kind of run into on some of the stuff we've been doing.
Yeah, the short answer is yes. We could always take suggestions. I don't know if we could streamline because there's a lot of information on the website. We have people also saying, well, why isn't that on your website? But there's a lot of stuff there. If we could find a way to make it easier to find, that would be great.
I think that's true. It is all there. I mean, after a while digging around, we found all the information we needed, but it just seemed like we had to move around quite a bit to try to find that information. I just didn't know if there was a way to have a big button with that when you go on there, this is what you do, this is where you go, and what kind of permit are you looking for, and this is what you're going to need once you find that.
Yeah, we can look at that. And if you have any specific suggestions, I'm certainly open to it.
Okay.
I had someone the other day say, well, where does it say everything I need to apply for a residential permit? And it's actually on there. It's a checklist, but you have to go to like handout, single family residential checklist. And then I sent it to them. They were like, oh, that does list everything I need. But they couldn't find it. So.
Right.
Eric, let me ask you a question. I'm glad we're discussing this because I really think it's one of the most effective things we can do for the public is to, have better education for the applicants, and they do a better job. It's easier on you guys, and we have better life safety stuff built. But over a year, what do you estimate the percentages of contractor type applications versus residential private owner applications? Is it half and half, or do we have more in individual residential owner applications?
Looking at Jen.
I would say we have way more contractors
Okay, so
than homeowners.
it is, okay, now in looking at the contractor applications on behalf of the owners, is it half commercial and half residential, or more commercial?
No, it's much more residential. I would say it's roughly 85% residential and utility, 15% commercial.
Gotcha. All right. So that's where most of the action is on residential type projects, whether they're contractor or homeowner applicants. Okay. Well, what you have been discussing and the information we got from our own member trying to build a place, I think that's useful, and I think concentrating on improving that would be very helpful.
I think that's it, and I'll just kind of give you a little bit of my perspective on some of this too, Rex, and that is that we do as a subcontractor, we get plans that are missing a lot of the information that we need or whatever, but the contractors themselves need to step up, and I think that's the challenge, is saying, well, you can't just throw it at me saying, give me my paperwork I need for the county. or for the jurisdiction to hand it in and just tell me what I need to do. And then we go through our process and look at what needs to happen or whatever and kick a piece of paper back to them. But it's not necessarily correlating with the other subs or the other contractors that they're doing. And that's just creating problem on the review side, and it comes back. But it's also education, but it's also accountability, and it's a piece on the contractors need to sort of step up also, take responsibility for what they're building and how they're doing. I mean, we have contractor licensing, which is supposed to indicate that they know what they're doing. And I'm sure, Steve, you get the same thing. It's like, I don't know all this crap, but just tell me what I need to do and make it happen for me, and I don't really care, right? So that's the challenge I think that we can look at as this group and saying, how are we gonna bring that up? How are we gonna bring that to the education side and helping everybody, have their ducks in a row before they submit.
Well, I
Yeah,
don't know, Eric, do you always require a pre-app? I mean, that would be something we typically would do on a planning process, but like City of Fort Collins, when we go through a planning, excuse me, when we go through a planning review, concept review on development, site development, for instance, which ultimately ends up with a building, that's one of the comments is always at the bottom of the list is set up a pre-construction meeting with building department, and here's the current codes, and you go from there. Excuse me.
Steve, I think that is so much the truth, and that is what we're seeing is that we're seeing a lot of what happened in or what happens in commercial world move to the residential, and the residential contractors, especially the old ones, are kind of used to just I write it up on a napkin and aren't I good? But that's not where things are. And as we move what we're doing in commercial more to the residential side, it has really added a complication that they don't have. So
to answer your question, Steve, if they're applying for a planning review, they have to have a meeting and go through everything they're gonna have to submit and what the process is. And those come to me as referrals, and I'll put comments on there and have a memo, lets them know what code we're under, and here's some of the things to consider. Kind of a high level, occupancy size, energy code, accessibility, et cetera, whatever, talk to the fire department. But we don't require a pre-app for everybody. It's available if they want it. And a lot of people do come into our office and talk to our staff and before they actually submit the plans, but we don't make it mandatory.
Well, it's kind of like planning, though. If you went through a checklist with that potential, contractor or developer, but if you were able to go through that and say, okay, health department is going to require your soils and septic analysis, so you're going to need structural, which obviously have that in your body of information, but because of wind loading and soils conditions, certain areas require a level of detail on the structural side that other sites may not. So I was just trying to get drill down a little bit that, hey, we put you on notice when you came in initially and we gave you the checklist and here are the things that you were supposed to submit. And when you come back in, we're going to look for them or we're going to kick them out in the first week after we've reviewed it and put it back in your hands, and you can sit on it as long as you want until you get the rest of the information put together. So yeah, I realize that's an iteration that takes some time and more staffing, but just an observation too. I don't know how labor intensive it is for you for staff, but often when I come in to planning or building, I see individual homeowners that are coming in for sit downs with building officials trying to understand why or how they can't get a permit or why they have to go through zoning. So that may be a small percentage of it, but I certainly understand that and see that a lot of individual homeowners are kind of wading through the weeds on their own. And I know that's a whole separate education task in itself. So I know you guys are dealing with them as best you can. And some of them come away happy and understand better. And other ones are just ticked off that they can't do what they want, that kind of attitude. So, but you're always going to have that. So that's just an observation. Again, I always see people waiting for an explanation of why I can and can't do something. So
Yeah, Rex, go ahead.
Yeah, well, a handout, Eric, is a no-brainer, you know. And that's pretty effective for the amount of effort it takes to produce that and possibly review them every year and update them a little bit and expand them. But how much more effort is it to have a pre-application meeting required, if not all, on certain types of projects? Would it require a lot of staff? I mean, is it a half-hour type thing, or is it an hour and a half type thing? Is it out of the question?
Well, there's a balancing act between, and my plans examiners are already complaining to me about how much time they spend doing non-plan review, whether that's answering phone calls or meeting with people at the counter, et cetera. So if we do more of that, unless we're able to hire more staff, which we don't want to do right now since there may be a recession or slowdown. But if we do more of the pre-education stuff, my thought's always been it saves time on the back end, but it does take plans examiners away from examining plans. And so it might, increase the time. But it's worth thinking. I mean, a lot of time we do offer that. So a lot of times for the big projects, especially large commercial, they will come in and talk to us. Like for instance, on the Chimney Hollow project, there's a lot of buildings. The dam itself is not under our jurisdiction, but there's a lot of buildings there that are. We've been meeting with them regularly, and before they ever started, we met with them. And on some of the large county projects, we've met with facilities to talk about the behavioral health center and alternative sentencing in the jail. So it makes sense for sure on those. I'm not sure on each house it makes sense, but maybe if it's a really big house and we get, fairly large houses in the county, people do come in, as Steve mentioned, and talk to us before they even apply, but it's at their call.
Yeah, well, I can see the payback and advantage, more efficient really on requiring it on certain size projects.
Yeah.
But, on every homeowner and small residential project, it would seem to take an inordinate amount of extra effort. But I think you got a handle on some suggestions and ideas there. But this is to me, it's the most fertile area, educating the contractors and the subcontractors is the best thing we can do.
Okay, so that's definitely on the work plan, and we can talk about that more. Contractor and public education, outreach, website, handouts, and the board would, offer suggestions and advice on that.
Right.
All right. Well, I think if there's no more discussion, that pretty much kind of concludes what we're doing today.
So again, because Rex missed it as a process, I'll write this up and send it out to everyone, including Wyatt, who couldn't be here. And then at our next meeting, we can, make any changes we need and formally adopt it and then pass it on to the commissioners as the board's 2023 work plan.
I think it's a great start. So thanks.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, so we'll have a meeting then in November, and then we can discuss whether December's.
Right.
And just a heads up, I'll be out of town for the next meeting, so I can be remote, but I will not be attending in person.
Okay.
That will be November 9th then.
Assuming we have one, but yeah.
Yeah, well, I think we said we were gonna try to at least do this real quick, just to even do approval of minutes, so we don't start getting those backlogged, that we can just kind of keep those going. We don't have to spend too much time, but.
Yes, but especially if you send it out ahead of the meeting, that would be great. Everybody can get a chance to review it and respond.
Questions? I move we close the meeting.
Second.
All in favor, just say aye.
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 Any opposed? Yeah, we're opposed. All right, meeting's adjourned, and we'll see you next month.
Thank you.
Get email. We'll watch for that.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Yep, thanks.